Hello and welcome to Hill House for the series Beyond Doubt. We're going to be looking at different questions about the Christian faith. The subject for this morning is the existence of God. Way back in 1802, the Reverend William Paley wrote a book called Natural Theology. In this, he suggested that there was a sort of divine watchmaker who made the universe. He looked at the order in the universe and decided that, yes, it must have a designer, a creator behind it. But very recently, a Dr. Richard Dawkins has written another book, but he's called it The Blind Watchmaker. Remember those old clockwork things that you might have at home or your relatives might have? Cogs and springs and all sorts of things inside. Looks incredibly complex, and they were. And the Swiss were very famous for making them. But we would never look even at some of the watches today and say, well, it just happened. The divine watchmaker says, here is the creation that we see around us. There must be a God. And yet today, people like Dr. Richard Dawkins are saying, well, it was a blind watchmaker that made it. It just sort of happened by chance. There was no God behind it. In fact, this particular man had a conversion experience, not to Christianity, but he believed originally in the design element and possibly that there was a God behind it. Then as he looked at biology, he saw some of those funny things that you see where I'm sure God has a sense of humor, and he creates all sorts of animals, and they looked at some of them and said, well, surely that is not a divine creator making that. Surely he wouldn't have made it like that. But of course, there is an immense variety. Some of you here are very, very nice looking, and some, like the fellas here, are a bit iffy. But, you know, we're all God's creation, if we believe it, or we're here produced by the blind watchmaker. Some people, and I heard this recently on Radio 4 nonetheless, say that the world is an illusion. It just happened. It's something that's in our minds only. Remember the song, Life is But a Dream? I actually heard somebody last week on Radio 4 actually saying that as his view, something that he actually said over the radio saying, that's what I believe, that the world is just an illusion. Now, most of you would know that it's pretty real. In fact, here at a camp, you know that after a night's sleep, you're feeling pretty sore on the backside. You know that you're real. The other alternative, of course, is to say that the universe is eternal. It's been here all the time. It always was, it is, and it always will be. Nobody made it, it was always here. That's a view that some people hold. Others say that it just came out of nothing. It just happened out of nothing. The last view, of course, is the view that Christians hold, that it was created by God. God made the heaven and the earth. Here in the Bible, you may not have read it all, but most of us would know that the first verse in the Bible says, in the beginning, God created the heaven and the earth. It doesn't seek to prove God, it states it as a fact that we either accept or reject. And that's the starting point for thinking about God. Do I really believe that he exists or not? Do I believe in the divine watchmaker that made everything, or do I believe in the blind watchmaker who just produced it out of, well, nothing, perhaps? Or we might even believe that the world is an illusion. The don't knows of this world. Then there are these people, and there are a number of them, people who call themselves agnostics. People who say it's not possible to know. You can't know God, therefore I'll just go through life believing in human beings and doing the best I can. I'm agnostic. I don't really know, and I don't think it's possible to know. There are others, of course, who hold this view, the atheistic view. They would believe that the world came out of nothing. We're here by blind chance. Scientists talk about us climbing out of the primordial ooze and the chemical soup. And I heard a wonderful expert recently telling us that we're all come from the stars. You know, we're made out of the material of the stars. Now, that may well be true, but who made the stars? And who made us? That's the big question that everybody's asking. Of course, this view is the one that I hold, and a number of other people in this country and around the world would hold to that view that God created as being the most logical out of all the views that you've got in front of you. The Christian faith is based on facts. It's logical. It makes sense. In fact, the study of mankind is known as anthropology. In fact, it comes from a Greek word called anthropos. And it really simply means that Mankind, you and me, boys, girls, men and women, are upward lookers. We're the ones that look up. In fact, we're the only animals that can actually look up. And of course, when we think of God, we do tend to look up, don't we? Of course, critics would say, well, if you're in Australia, you're looking in exactly the opposite direction. Of course, that's true. But we tend to look beyond this world for a divine creator. Even those spacemen that came out and walked on the moon, they were the ones, many of them, that hold strong views about Christianity. They in fact read, you remember, on one of the trips around the moon when they came out of radio silence on Apollo 8, I believe it was, they read, "In the beginning, God created the heaven and the earth." And those of us that believed that thought it was good. And those of us that didn't thought it was bad. In fact, it's now not possible for an astronaut to read from the Bible anymore because people got upset by that view. They maybe hold some other views. Now, I'm sure you'll agree that people are quite happy and allowed to have their different view about God. But if you're a Christian, you hold a view that I think holds up best. It makes real sense. Of course, the greatest man of all was Jesus Christ. He came into the world to show us what God was like. That was the amazing thing. He actually came from heaven and came to show us what God was like in human terms. What better way could there be than God became a man and looked like us, acted like us, experienced all the things that we experience so that we could see what God was like. He said, "I and the Father are one." He claimed to be God. He said, "Before Abraham was, I am." He used the very name that the Jews knew meant God himself. I am. And of course, the cross is the central point in the Christian faith because that's where God died for us on the cross. That's the amazing fact, that the world isn't just an illusion. It's not always been there. It was created. In fact, science tells us now that there was a Big Bang. Back in 1965, they found out that there was this background of radiation all around the universe. The remnants of that first Big Bang, that incredibly dense, little tiny, maybe the size of a marble, they say, piece of material that the Bible says, in the beginning, God created. There was a beginning. And we must decide which of those views we hold. We have to place our faith in Jesus Christ if we really want to know God. That's the acid test of this whole thing. Do I really believe in God? Do I really believe that Jesus Christ came into the world to show me that God? Many of us say, yes, there is a God, and I believe that God to be Jesus Christ. I believe He came to reveal Himself to me. Others, of course, hold the atheistic view, and they say, no, there is no God. Now, that's a statement that cannot be proved, just as my view of the Christian faith cannot be proved either. But in experience, I can work it out in my mind. I can look at the views, I can look at the world around me, and I can come up with a conclusion. Yes, there is a God. Is there really a God? Surely there must be. It makes sense. It fits the facts better than any other view. So I don't say, like many people, well, maybe. I say yes. If you're in the middle here, thinking about becoming a Christian, thinking about the existence of God, then I would suggest you really think through the facts. In fact, I've got a flow chart here that you could have a look at afterwards. A logical run-through, if you like, of all the different steps you'd have to take to think through. Does God exist? No. Maybe, yes. And you work through it step by step. And every one of these questions that we're going to look at have actual facts to back them. They make sense. You can think about it. Now, lots of people say that Christians, they're a bit silly, a bit stupid, and they can't make it. Well, that's not true. Christians are the ones that really think through things very, very clearly. And we have meaning and purpose and value simply because we've said, I can't possibly know everything. There must be a God out there. To say that there is no God is saying that you know more than anybody else. And of course, most of us here would say, I'm really not sure. And I'm maybe in this point here, and I'm going to think this through, and I'm going to come to a conclusion, and I'm going to find out for myself how I view this question, is there really a God?